You've probably heard of the Rothschilds, those giant bankers who financed Europe's wars and steered its politics. But in the East there was a family doing something very similar, yet most people today don't even remember their name, the Sassoons, a family that rose from exile to the peak of commerce, earning a massive fortune from goods everyone wanted but governments frowned upon. When the world didn't even know what a global economy was, the Sassoons were already playing the game. This is the monetary historian, money, power, and the dark corners of history. And yes, nothing is ever as simple as it looks. The story of the Sassoons did not begin in London, not in New York either. It began in Baghdad in the early 19th century, on the dusty yet bustling streets of the Ottoman Empire. David Sassoon was born in 1792. His father was the treasurer of the Ottoman governor. The family had long been powerful Jewish merchants who controlled trade routes, stretching from Basra to Iran, but wealth always meant risk in Ottoman politics of that era. When power shifted, the Sassoons fell out of favor and pressure eventually followed. In 1829, David gathered his family and fled from Baghdad to Bombay, carrying nothing but his faith and his knowledge of trade. Bombay was under British rule at the time, humid, chaotic, crowded, but also a port city full of opportunity. David had no title, no diploma, but he had something remarkable: supply chain intuition. The term supply chain didn't exist then, yet David had already cracked it. He knew what the British wanted, what India could produce, what China would buy. And most importantly, he understood that chaos meant profit, as long as you had the courage to stay in it. He started small: cotton, yarn, textiles, whatever could pass through the port. But with one difference: he built trust with people from every culture. He hired Jewish, Indian, Arab merchants. He spoke different languages. He built an empire out of relationships. He created a network sustained not by contracts but by bonds. And then came the product that changed the course of his life: opium. The British East India Company had long dominated the opium trade, but in China, bans, addiction, and smuggling were tangled together. This was the shadow economy of the 19th century, and Sassoon entered it not by chance, but with a clear strategy. He wasn't transporting the opium, he wasn't managing the smugglers, but he provided the financing, the insurance, and the logistics. He became the merchant behind the empire, the bank behind the merchant. By the 1840s, Sassoon ships were sailing under the British flag, and his warehouses were overflowing with goods bound for the East. There were criticisms. Many said, "They profit from the suffering of others." But those who defended him said, "This is how the empire works. He's just playing the game masterfully." Whatever your moral view may be, the result was undeniable. David Sassoon became one of the richest men in Asia. By the 1850s, he was building factories, constructing ports, and employing tens of thousands of people. He built synagogues, hospitals, schools. Some of them still stand today. He didn't just move goods. He built the roads to move them. He invested every dollar he earned into infrastructure, real estate, and industry. For him, profit wasn't the goal, but the tool for permanence. Every dollar made from opium or cotton turned into something tangible: property, ports, or industry. And this strategy paid off. When the American Civil War cut off Britain's supply of cotton, Indian cotton became critical. Who controlled this trade? The Sassoons. When silver flows from China disrupted global markets, who managed it? The Sassoons. Crises were their playground. Of course, success brought competition. The British East India Company never trusted them. Chinese officials despised them. Rival families attacked them by cutting prices, but the Sassoon network was woven with family ties. David sent his sons across the world: Baghdad, Hong Kong, Shanghai, London. Each one founded a new branch. They were no longer just merchants. They were traveling ambassadors of capital. When David died in 1864, his fortune had become power that spanned continents. His sons had become global financiers, and his name had become synonymous with reliability in London and Hong Kong. His eldest son Elias turned toward China. He established companies in Shanghai and Hong Kong. After the Opium Wars forced the ports open, the Sassoons rose from commerce into finance. By the late 19th century, Shanghai was half Chinese, half colonial chaos. Banks, brothels, opium, silver, foreign debt. And the loans that made this flow possible were issued by none other than the Sassoons. By the 1880s, they were called the Rothschilds of the East. Not because they imitated them, but because they knew how to generate power from mobility. David's son Albert Abdullah Sassoon returned to England, was knighted by Queen Victoria, and the family rose from exile into British aristocracy. Yet, behind this respectable image remained one truth. The bulk of their wealth came from the opium trade. It was completely legal from Britain's viewpoint, but for China it was a devastating social collapse. The global economy of the 19th century was built on this contradiction. Moral outrage on one side, profit on the other. The Sassoons didn't invent this system, they merely perfected it. The Sassoons were the invisible hands of the empire, loyal, indispensable, efficient. In the early 20th century, opium lost its influence, but the Sassoons were no longer merchants. They were bankers and investors. They built skyscrapers in Shanghai, luxury hotels in India, financial institutions in London. This wealth was born from one of the darkest trades in history. That was the essence of the Sassoon Dynasty. They rose through intelligence, strategy, and courage, but were empowered by a system that rewarded moral blindness. But history's memory is strange. Europe remembers the Rothschilds because it wrote its own history. The Sassoons, who rose from Asia, are often relegated to footnotes. Yet their fingerprints still remain on Mumbai's factories, Shanghai's Bund, and London's financial institutions. The Sassoons didn't just create wealth. They created a model, a borderless business network, a strategy that aligned profit with empire, courage that turned exile into power. In short, they proved the idea that money has no nation, only a network. But empires change. As the 20th century accelerated, Britain weakened, nationalism exploded across Asia. Trade routes turned into battle lines. The Great Depression struck. The world shook. The Sassoon companies were hit but did not collapse. They merely shifted direction. The age of merchant dynasties was ending, replaced by giant corporations. Power based on family ties lost value in an increasingly institutional world. Wars in China, Japanese occupation, revolutions. India was moving toward independence. The family's global network was scattered by the very globalization they had helped create. After World War II ended, the Sassoons quietly withdrew into the background of history. Their firms were absorbed by giant financial institutions, their assets in Asia were nationalized. Their name survived, but its weight was no longer the same. Still, their legacy did not disappear. It transformed. The Sassoons were among the first to understand that money moves faster than politics. Today, many principles used by giants like Amazon, Apple, Tencent, and BlackRock, conquering markets, creating dependency, ensuring loyalty through systems, are principles the Sassoons perfected 2 centuries ago. There was a time when global trade, political instability, and technological change made the Sassoons indispensable. Today, those same forces test modern giants. But history offers a warning. When the system that makes you strong becomes fragile, so do you. The rise of the Sassoons was the result of courage and intelligence. They fell because they confused imbalances with stability. And they remind us, no dynasty lasts forever. Only the structures it leaves behind endure. Those structures still stand today in Shanghai, Mumbai, and London. The Sassoons prove that an exiled life can become an empire, that faith can turn into finance, and that wealth can outlive nations. But they also left a warning the modern world still ignores. When money becomes the only purpose and profit the only principle, history remembers not your talent, but your consequences. Every empire built on imbalance eventually pays the price, and history's book always closes. What remains are the consequences. If this gave you a new perspective, don't forget to subscribe, because Monetary Historian is made not only of numbers, but of human stories, and the Sassoons are one of the most striking examples.